Today on the channel, I'm going to discuss whether or not you should be running search with PMAX or search with DemandGen. Hey, Ed here from 10,000 Foot View, and I've got another Google Ads quick tip for you today. Just before I jump in, a reminder to please like our content and subscribe to the channel. We post about Google Ads at least once every week. Okay, so today, as I mentioned up front, what I'm going to be talking about is whether you should be using search with PMAX as a combination for lead gen, or whether you should consider using search with demand gen. So up until recently, it was pretty much a no-brainer, and that was using search with PMAX. And this would apply, at least with our agency, we would look at using this combination. Once a client started spending around 10K a month plus, usually it makes sense at that point to expand beyond just using search ads. And the reason why we kind of have that milestone or benchmark is simply because until you're able to kind of generate 25 conversions a month with PMAX, it's not going to run very efficiently. And 10K, is it a made up number? Well, it kind of depends on what your average cost per click and your average cost per conversion are. But we just found like overall on average, 10K is usually kind of a number where, an advertiser is at a point where, okay, we've got search running really efficiently, things are well optimized, we want to grow more. So what do you do next? And what PMAX will give you, obviously, at that point is the ability to scale further by adding incremental search queries, right, that you're maybe not targeting with your keywords, and also start to work the top of the funnel with display, discovery, map ads, all that stuff, video as well, to help warm up the audience at the top of the funnel so that they're more likely to search for your brand, right, convert through your branded ads, and organic as well. And also just you're going to tend to see a higher click-through rates on your other search ads and higher conversion rates when they hit your website. So that's kind of classically what we've done. But with the recent improvements to DemandGen, DemandGen has become a much more powerful tool for top of funnel marketing. And so that leaves the quandary about like, what do you do? What's the right combination? So I'm just going to go through quickly like the benefits and the drawbacks for each combination, and then just summarize everything. So, under the current kind of setup with Search and PMAX, one of the main benefits of PMAX is that it informs you about what additional search queries you might roll back into your search campaigns as keywords, right? So having that additional kind of information, which you're not going to get from DemandGen. PMAX also greatly simplifies and optimizes your investment across the entire funnel. So basically, you set up the campaign in your audience signal, your asset groups, and you let it run, and Google is going to optimize where you're spending the money to generate, your target CPA or your ROAS or just your max conversions, while also reaching that top of funnel inventory. PMAX also, obviously, in that vein, will improve your performance to the bottom of the funnel automatically. And the other thing that's, I'd say, really important for advertisers, less so for their agencies, is that it's easy to justify running PMAX and search, because PMAX, when you look at your KPIs, will at least apparently drive a similar performance to your search campaigns, right? We know as agencies that the lead quality driven by PMAX is usually less than what you get in search. But it's just, again, it's easier for an advertiser to justify spending on PMAX when the numbers look good, right? It's like, hey, getting similar to search, I know it's helping with top of funnel. So it's all well and good. The downside of this combination are, and have been forever, the lack of transparency. So while we do now get channel reporting, we can't see what individual display placements or video ads are generating conversions. We can't get impressions reporting, which is pretty basic. Um, and with branded, again, we can now start to get like some keyword data. So Google has unlocked a lot of stuff. So we do have better transparency, but there's still things that we can't see that we would like to see. More importantly is a complete inability to direct or adjust the investment in the different channels. So while we might see like, okay, hey, we can see where all the display placements in terms of impressions, we can block individually, but we can't really force Google to spend less money on that. And certainly we can't do it granularly. We can't say, hey, we want to put 20% on video. That's just not possible with PMAX. And then the inability to target audiences as well. So, the signals is very kind of broad targeting where you kind of say, this is who I think we should target, and then Google does whatever it wants, right? So generally, again, with PMAX, the performance is good, but you don't have that granular reporting and targeting you can do. Then the other big issue with PMAX, which affects a lot of advertisers, is a high probability for click fraud. That is very difficult to stamp out just because, again, we can't see like which placements are driving artificially high click-through rates or extra conversions to tackle those. So basically, that's PMAX and search, and that's broadly what a lot of advertisers run with kind of what I'd say mid-level budget, so like 10K to 25K range. That's kind of what people are running now. Now, in terms of demand gen, very recently, like over the last 6 to 8 months, Google has really ramped up the number of new features and enabled through demand gen. And most of those revolve around improved targeting in terms of audiences and improved settings around which channels you want to advertise on. So not only can you use it to advertise on the discovery inventory, which is Gmail, Newsfeed, and YouTube with video and display, you can now also expand that to the display network. And you can have specific control, so you could create different ad groups that target different channels, which is really powerful. So, in terms of demand gen, what are the benefits? So the first thing is, and again, I'm assuming you're still running search in your search campaigns. So you're going to have full control of your search spend directly in search and your display spend in display only campaigns. So that means now you basically created two silos, right? You have your demand gen running your top of funnel, and you have your search campaigns retaining and controlling all of the search inventory. Whereas with PMAX, you're kind of splitting your search between search and PMAX. Now your search is only in your search campaigns, which just, again, you now have full control over your budgets and where you're spending your money. When you use demand gen, in terms of using keywordless targeting, which would normally be in PMAX, you can run dynamic search ads, or the newer AI Max, which just has a lot of enhancements. And I would just use AI Max versus dynamic search ads. It's just using the latest technology. We're all going to migrate there anyway. At some point, DSA will be, I'm sure, sunset within 6 to 12 months. Demand gen offers many targeting options, so including directly targeting audiences and including remarketing, which PMAX doesn't support. You can use lookalikes, or you can use audience signals as you do with PMAX, which is the Google's optimized targeting selector, essentially. So you have a lot greater control over what audience targeting you can do. And then further to targeting options, it's much easier to create specific creatives for different audience segments, right? So if you target lawyers and doctors, say, with your software product, you'd be able to create two different audiences in separate ad groups or even separate campaigns for that matter, and target them specifically. Whereas it's a little bit wishy-washy in PMAX. You can have asset groups and try to do that, but it's not necessarily going to be 100%, particularly because Google weighs a lot of targeting based on your landing page. And then lastly, you're just going to have much more specific reporting, because you'll be able to break out your campaign. Say, okay, here's demand gen. This one's targeting the upper funnel. This one's targeting the middle funnel, and then here's my search, right? So seemingly this combination offers much greater control over where you spend your money, and granular reporting. So all sounds great, and like, why wouldn't you do that always? So here are the downsides, right? So demand gen tends to generate a low number of conversions, except for remarketing, and this can cause small business advertisers to kind of just give up on it, or at least reduce their investment, because they'll see at the end of the month, hey, we spent 20% of our budget on this demand gen campaign. We only generated 2 leads. It's like $2,000 a lead, and over in search, I'm getting leads for $50. Like, why are we wasting money here? And so then you have to have that discussion between the agency and the client, where you explain again over and over again that the purpose of the demand gen campaign is not to generate conversions. It's to drive awareness and warm up the audience so that the conversions flowing through search and other places perform better. That's going to always be an argument with a lot of clients, and it just makes it difficult to justify running this combination. The next thing is, it takes a lot more expertise to build and optimize demand gen. A lot more thought has to go into it. And this is where PMAX is powerful in terms of letting AI figure things out for you and just kind of optimize performance automatically. It's also very early days for AI Max, right? So if you use this combination and you then expand your search to keyword lists using AI Max, we're seeing with a lot of advertisers, AI Max is just not performing very well. I think it's going to improve, just like we saw PMAX improve, but it may take quite a few months or even a year or so before it really gets dialed in. In the meantime, you could use DSA, but I don't think DSA is going to perform any better than AI Max, if that makes any sense. So that's a lot of information in a short video. But what's better, right? Or what makes sense? So at our agency, what we're finding is advertisers spending around 10K to 25K, maybe even a little bit more. And again, it really comes down to your cost per conversion, because it's a conversion volume question. But just kind of in that range generally, we find that sticking with PMAX with search as a combination tends to work best, because at that level, it's just nice to have kind of the automation driving performance automatically. I'm just kind of repeating myself, but PMAX just performs really, really well in that scenario, to help perform or drive more performance to the bottom of the funnel. Once you're spending like 25 and up, 50K, 100K, and particularly with advertisers that are more serious and they're more marketing savvy, then it does tend to make more sense to introduce the demand gen search model, wherein you're going to have a fairly large investment, and you're going to be able to create campaigns that are going to drive those actions that you want, whether it's top of funnel, middle of funnel, what have you. And the most important thing, speaking as an agency, is that our clients that are spending at that level, they get it, right? They understand that demand gen is there to drive the top of the funnel and not to generate extra conversions. But that's basically how we're doing it right now at my agency. So we're migrating some of our bigger spending clients away from PMAX. And sometimes it doesn't mean necessarily moving completely away from PMAX, but having a smaller investment there, or having a silo specifically for certain keyword themes, that kind of thing. And then moving more of it to demand gen, just because we can have a lot greater control, which makes sense when you have an agency running your stuff. Anyway, those are my thoughts on either using PMAX with search or DemandGen with search. I hope you found this video useful. That's it for me. I will see you next time.